Putting the Human Back into Technology with Gethin Ellis and Mark Williams. Welcome to the third episode of the FIT podcast. Here at gethinellis.com, whilst we know physical fitness is essential, our mental health is vital too, and our FIT podcast is all about putting the human back into technology. That's why we call it the FIT podcast. One thing we can probably all agree on is the last year has been unprecedented. So we wanted to seek out the views of technology leaders, business owners, consultants and many others from a range of different businesses and organisations to discuss with them the impact on their business, on their humans and on their technology and how they see the future unfolding. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to episode 3 where we are speaking to Dave Rawle, the Chief Technology Officer of Bytes.
Okay, welcome, Dave. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Putting the Human into Technology, the FIT podcast. So we'll just kick things off. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you do, your business, and your job role, what it involves, please?
I will try. Morning, Gethin. Morning, Mark. Thank you very much for having me along. So obviously, my name's David Rawle. I'm the Group CTO for Bytes Technology Group here in the UK. What do I do? A bit of everything. It feels like some days. I mean, my official remit within my job is that Bytes as a business has always been very well known for its licensing and procurement skills. It's my job to make sure that our customers know that I'm also here, or we're also here to provide them backup on technology. Effectively, I'm passionate about technology. I'm a little bit commercial as well. I seem to be able to communicate with people, and as a result, it means I've been given the role of communicating technology to our customers on behalf of Bytes. Basically, that's my job and what I'm here to do for the company, and try and get other people as passionate about it as I am.
Cool. So just quickly on that, and so Bytes have got this professional services arm that you help your customers with. Then I guess that's.
Well, to be honest, I get involved in a bit of all of it these days. So yes, we have professional services arms. We have a security professional services arm. We have a Microsoft professional services arm. We have an AWS professional services arm, and we also have a software asset management professional services arm. The Microsoft and security areas roll up directly into me within the business, and I try and provide some form of leadership and strategy for those two, and I work very closely with the gentlemen that run the SAM and AWS business arms as well. So it's about trying to get all the messaging right across the business. I mean, Bytes is quite a big beast these days. So it's just about trying to get the messaging right and make it simple for our customers. That's really what it's about. And actually, hopefully in the theme of today, making it simple for our staff as well, because sometimes when businesses can do all these different service pots and have all these different skills available, it's very different for the staff and the salespeople up to be able to understand how and what we do and how to sell it and position it. And particularly over the last year when we're not all meeting up in the office and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get on to the second question in a second, Dave, but it's quite. I mean, I've been an ex-IT director myself, and actually I've used Bytes services. I won't mention which organisations, but I've used Bytes services, started in the past, and on the licensing side of things, and frankly, they've been very good. People are very knowledgeable, and all that sort of good stuff, which I'm sure is what you want to hear. But it's the truth, and I've been very pleased with. With engagement there. I didn't know that actually, to be honest, that you were in the professional services world. And I guess I kind of want to wrap up a question with the second question. Our second question is how's the last year impacted your business? But I kind of want to wrap that up a little bit with, we all work in tech, right? And we all know that the rate of change in tech is just getting, phenomenally quicker and quicker and quicker. So, how do you keep up with it? And with the last year, that's because you mentioned communication and helping your people out there, and it kind of feels like I'm not articulating myself very well, but it feels like there's a question in there around that rate of change, the last year, keeping up and communicating, and how do you do all of that?
Do you know what, Mark? It's a really good question, and it's really, really difficult. I'll try and. I think I can answer. I think I know what you're asking. For me, as you say, technology is changing so fast. And I've always been very, very lucky in that. So I worked for a smaller business within the Bytes Group until the 1st of March last year, which was the dedicated security business, which was Bytes Security Partnerships. And as such, I was very, very lucky in that I was the joint MD and technical director of that business, but I was effectively the lead pre-sales consultant as well, because it was a relatively small business. It was 60 to 70 people. And because of that, you're fixing your own business and developing your own business while also talking to people about how they're developing theirs. So it gives you this really nice feedback loop of what people are doing and what you're doing, which enables you to talk to people about what they're doing. And actually, the challenge for me coming in as the group CTO into the broader Bytes business now has been a slightly lower level of customer interaction, makes it harder to know what businesses are doing, which means I have to work twice as hard on that. I think so many people that are at a senior level in business, particularly somebody like myself who doesn't necessarily have a customer remit, can get isolated. They don't really know what's actually happening. And he said, we'll talk about what's changed over the last year as well. But for me, it's just about meddling, for want of a better description. I meddle in all areas of the Bytes business to try and understand what they're doing. You know, a lot of our staff would laugh, probably, I say laughably, hopefully laughably, call me the chief meddler within Bytes, but I try and get into a little bit of everything. You know, what's the development team doing? What's the IT team doing? How are, you know, our asset management practice, what are they planning over the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and how is their business changing? I try and get on as many customer calls as possible. And actually, I think even senior people, we shouldn't be afraid of doing a bit of Googling, a bit of web research. If you get 5 or 10 minutes between meetings, getting on the internet and having a little look at what Microsoft have launched or what's happening in the world, getting on like a website like the Register or something like that. I know a lot of IT people spit when you say that name, but just looking at what's going on, you've got to be interested. Otherwise, it just passes you by so fast in this industry that we work in. I don't think people should be afraid to just spend a little bit of time Googling, YouTube, things like that, and just doing a bit of research. It's not wasted time, particularly if you're a technologist type person.
I remember Gethin and I did it was an in-person one of these types of things a few years ago. We what did we call it? Something like
not the GDPR news. Is when GDPR was a big thing.
Not the GDPR news. That's what we called it. And I remember, so I sort of we did it in twos. You know, he did a bit and I did a bit, and so on and so forth. But and surprisingly, a lot of people that we knew that would work with us, you know, came along, gave us some support, etc., which was nice. And I'd not long since finished leading a project with a large membership body, a CRME type thing. And I remember one of the things that I said to there was a couple of people in the team there was that, you know, when you're doing this stuff, you've got to give yourself thinking space. And, you know, as a general rule of thumb, you know, 20% of your time should be thinking about things. So I include, you know, research and Googling and all that sort of stuff into that area. I remember my technical lead coming to me and say, "You didn't tell me I was allowed to think." I couldn't help but share that joke there. But I mean, that's really interesting. I think we've got the title for this episode, Geff. We'll come to that in a minute. Yeah. But I mean, it's great to hear that, you know, from one to another sort of thing that you regard. Learning, and I think in all its contexts, the learning about what's going on, the learning from, you know, your people about where they're doing, you know, the inquisitiveness to see things in the future. I think it's great. How have things changed then or how have things been impacted over the last, you know, 12 or 15 months or so? Well,
it's really interesting. I mean, for us as Bytes, our volume of business has not been impacted. We've been very, very lucky in that respect. The business makeup has changed slightly, inevitably. I mean, let's be honest, at the end of March, April last year, you know, everybody went out and bought, for instance, a truckload of Citrix licenses because suddenly everybody was at home. And then everybody went and bought Teams, you know, extra Teams licenses or extra Microsoft licensing or whatever because everybody was staying at home. Yeah. You know, and if I'm being honest, that helped us. But then what hurt us was within our security business, within the security services we do, you know, a big chunk of what we do is hardware replacement, is swapping out bigger boxes as businesses grow, and nobody wanted to touch anything. I mean, we had one customer that had bought just before the end of the previous year, had bought a massive chunk of hardware. I mean, we're talking 40 odd boxes, and 2020 was supposed to be the year of working through those sort of every 2 to 3 weeks and swapping out all of that hardware. And of course, they didn't want to touch anything. You know, in a world where everybody's working from home, you couldn't have even a minute of downtime at any point. So they didn't want to touch anything. So actually recognizing services revenues became harder. licensing revenues came up. For me, going back to that communication piece, I never thought I'd say this, but I miss trade shows. I actually missed trade shows because that's where you can kick ideas around, have a couple of beers over lunch. Do you know what I mean? Catch up with people you haven't seen for a while. I mean, IT is an unbelievably small industry here in the UK. I mean, everybody knows everybody pretty much. Yeah. And just find out, how's your year been? What's been going on? What's big for you? What's not big for you? With as many people as possible. You don't realize how much you miss it. And I think that's been a big impact because it does feel very much that we're in isolation. I know that's kind of been the point, but we've all been talking on screens, but it's water cooler chat, right? Yeah. Just the quick snippets. That's what you miss, and that bit of interaction. And you have like a trade show, you pop up onto a stand to say hello to somebody and then there'll be somebody else there from another reseller who you don't really know, but you do know, and how are things going with you? And then the three of you will end up chatting for a bit. And do you know what I mean? It's those quick bit of interactions. And actually, do you know the thing, ironically, that I miss the most from the last 12 to 15 months, I'm just starting to get back now, is driving. And it's really interesting what you just said about thinking time, because I never realized how much of my thinking I did to even just the half an hour to or from the office. Yeah. But if you're driving to a meeting without really realizing it, you're planning the meeting on the way there, and you're driving back from the meeting, you're having ideas about what you can do to help that customer. I really miss driving. I really miss it. And it just goes back to that thinking time point. And I won't hijack the agenda, but remind me to come back to that, because it's a conversation I do have with a lot of my staff, is about how they should spend their time and proactive time versus reactive time in terms of how they should be on a sliding scale.
Tell us now. There's no.
It segues into the next question anyway, okay. in how people fit in. So we were going to ask how people fit into your organisation, and this is a perfect time for you to talk about thinking time.
So it's that the point that you made, Mark, about not being allowed to think. I mean, I've had genuinely some of my team, and I'm very, very lucky. I've got a very, very strong team of very different reports. As the last sort of 18 months has passed since I took on this role within the broader Bytes group, I've had a lot of different areas of the business rolled up into me. But the one thing I say to all of those people, they're all managers of people in their own right. They're all leaders within business and managers within their own right. But it's really hard to get people to tell you that they're not 100% busy. Everybody assumes that if you say you're not 100% busy, that's a bad thing. And for me, it's like, no. I know you're 100% busy, because I know all of the people that work for me are the kind of people that if they're not 100% busy, will make themselves 100% busy with genuinely good things. But trying to get them to understand the inbound work, if you like, when you're doing things for other people, I want that to be at maximum 80 to 85%. I want 15 to 20% of how can you improve the business, look around, interact with people, find out what's going on, get under the hood of things, plan things, have ideas, get involved with things like this. This isn't revenue generating for the business, but this is a good thing to do. It makes me think. You'll challenge me throughout this session. It'll make me think about things. It's thinking time. It's interactive time. So I really encourage people. It's like, if you get beyond 80 to 85% on reactive workload, you need to flag it, because we've got a problem. Because I need my teams to have proactive thinking time and the ability to look out rather than just be soaking stuff up all the time.
That's really quite interesting. I've run some professional services departments as part of my historic role. And you come to do your budget for the year. And people say, well, what are your targets going to be, and sort of have a look at the number of people you've got. I can't do the maths in my head, so I'm not going to give the example. But essentially, you would not set your professional services income to be budget, right, or target, whichever. I know there's a difference, to be 100% of 35 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and so on and so forth. You'd probably set it around about the 65% mark, maybe 70%, something of that sort of nature as a budget. And you might set something like 75, 80% as a target, just as an example. So it's quite interesting why perhaps people don't think like that, You know, when I don't mean this to critique, but when I think about operationally how things are going to be, there, and the workload that people have got, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a really, really astute point, that to get people to plan that time into there, and to encourage them that they want it. I just think it's quite interesting that I know. It's so obvious, isn't it, really?
It is, to me it is, but culturally, so many people and so many businesses, it's not acceptable for, to sit down and say, well, how did you spend your week? Do a weekly catch up. How did you spend your week? Yeah, it's been really busy all week, but luckily on Friday afternoon, I managed to spend a little bit of time watching. I mean, if I think about the security team, they're so driven by the vendors and the products that we deliver, but actually, they got to drop onto a podcast or a webinar for a vendor we don't deliver to see what that vendor does. To see how that product works. And actually, that's great, because that makes them a well-rounded person. It makes them better able to articulate what's special about the things we do by knowing what other vendors do.
I think it's a cultural thing as well, Dave. As you say, you hit the nail. There's a culture thing, and traditionally, like all the years I've been contracting and working, you do a timesheet at the end of the week, and it has to add up to this figure, or you get queried and questioned why. So, in going back to your thing, well, I need to put this on my timesheet. Have I got a code for it? If I haven't got a code for it, then I haven't got the time to book.
Yeah.
So, and it's that mentality that probably needs to shift a little bit. Well, quite a lot. Not necessarily in Bytes, because I think it sounds like Bytes are doing a good job, but generally across the board, there's that mentality of account for your time, and it's got to be 37.5 hours or whatever it is for it to add up.
Well, I mean, our professional services team within the security business, we were very lucky over the years to, I'll use the phrase, acquire a number of very, very good consultants from our competitors, because we didn't focus on burning them out with occupancy. Yeah. We just didn't. It wasn't the way that we worked. Arguably, and my joint MD and the sales director within that business would say we didn't push them hard enough. But the margin numbers were where they should have been. We probably could have delivered more days within that team if we really pushed them. But are we really adding value to the customer if we send a burnt out consultant that hasn't got time to think about their install and do their project planning properly, and hasn't had time to fiddle with the new features and actually use the new features in a product, and they're just bouncing from install to install? And the answer is no. Yeah. We're not doing the right thing by our consultants. And we've had a history of keeping people for at least 5 years. Some of our consultants have been with us for over 10 years. And you must be doing something right if you can achieve that and balance it with good revenues and a growing business and a good culture. You've got to be doing something right. And it isn't always about extracting the last ounce out of people in terms of workload. I mean, one of my sentences I use with customers a lot is cost and value are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I think in maybe in the UK and in UK corporates, we're still not quite there with that. Cost and value are not the same thing.
Cool. Yeah, no, indeed they're not. I mean, as we know, the title of this Fit podcast is about putting humans into technology, and one of the things that relates to that, Gethin and I are both very passionate, if you like, about helping people, particularly with helping people cope with stuff. And sometimes that's about just passing on knowledge to do it. Sometimes it's finding easier ways to do things, etc. But it sounds like I will bring up the stress word, but it sounds like that you're planning that helping people to cope. People get stressed all the time, and particularly in technology. Somebody wants something, or just take your example of, oh God, my business needs another 1,000 Teams licenses, and we need them tomorrow because this COVID thing has struck, and all that sort of thing. Obviously, people want to help as a general statement, don't they? Most people go to work because they quite enjoy helping other people. But it's interesting that there's this sort of planned-in factor from yourself that must help with the stress of your people and your teams. Do you measure that somehow?
Sorry, Mark. The joy of the internet. I don't know if that's my internet link or you guys. I missed a little bit of that. I got most of it in terms of stress and how we manage stress within people. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can still hear me all right. But
I can hear you loud and clear, mate. Loud and clear.
So stress, it's a really difficult one. I do find I've got certain people within the teams, if I'm being honest, who bring stress onto themselves. And with those people, I spend a lot of time trying. You can only do so much if people invite stress onto themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do make the point to people, I need you to, like I said, that 80-20 rule. And at one point, the team was quite busy, but I wanted them to spend that little bit of time. And we actually agreed to set certain KPIs for the team that they had to book in what we referred to some lab time that wasn't anything to do with any active tickets or any work, where we would set them something new. Here's a new feature from the vendor. You will not pass your KPIs for the quarter if you don't put half a day into just fiddling with that, just to try and get them to book in and give themselves a break. I've been very lucky. When I interview people, I kind of make it very clear to them. Well, first off, I think interviewing this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think the way you interview people and how you interview people is key to the culture that you create. Because so many people do a sales job in an interview rather than being honest about what the business is, which means the company that people join isn't the company they think they're joining. Yeah. Okay. And the first thing is I'm brutally honest with people interview about what the good things and the bad things of any company, because all companies have bad elements to them. Yeah. And you've got to be honest about that, and you've got to be really, really focused in terms of describing stuff. And the way I used to describe the security partnerships business, the smaller businesses, it's like working for a dysfunctional family. We will fall out, we will have rows, we will have some amazing fun, but it is like working for a family. It's that kind of environment. So, you start with that as the culture and make sure people know what they're getting into. And part of what I'd always say to people when I interview is, if you are the kind of person that when you run out of things that you've been asked to do, you find the next thing for yourself, we will get on and you will thrive working in my business. If you're the kind of person that just stops and waits to be told what to do next, then just look in them. If you look in the mirror, if you see that person, if you know deep down that's who you are, even if I make you an offer, don't take it, because this is not going to work out. And I'm very honest about that. When you're an entrepreneurial type business and when you're a business that's growing as quickly as Bytes is, you need self-starting people within the business. And, for me, I couldn't be more honest about that with people. And what it does mean, and if they're fooling themselves, we have to have a chat about it. Some people respond to it, some people don't. And again, you talk about stress. The stress of people feeling that they're not doing what they need to do, but nobody's telling them that they're not doing what people know whether they're doing what they need to be doing or not, right? And I think a really large element of workplace stress is when you've got managers that aren't prepared to say, you're not doing well enough, I need more from you. Because people know, and they know that their manager's thinking it, but so many managers won't tell them it. One of my golden rules of anything like that is that you should never be having a conversation with somebody that they don't know it's coming. Yeah. You should go, right, I just need to have a chat. Yeah. And they sit down and go, I know what you're going to say. It's this. What do we, I don't know what to do about it. What do you think we're going to do about it? It should never be, oh, I didn't know I had that problem. And that's all about, Mark, stress. And I do think, particularly with people working from home, there's so many people working. Am I doing a good job? Am I not doing a good job? What's going on in the rest of the company? Is everything all right? Is everything not all right? And that's building up a latent level of stress in business at the moment.
I think what I'm taking from that, well, perhaps we'll move on. I'll allow Gethin to ask a question, but what I'm taking from that Dave, is that there's Gethin and I we've helped out my son actually, who's working for a recruitment agency with a webinar recently, and it's about technical people and recruiting technical people. We seem to be, first time I've met you, but, easy to get along with, relatively straightforward talking and all those kind of things. And, okay, we've been around a bit and, perhaps you have a little bit of experience. But it always amazes me when, it's often technical people, but this could be any person. Well, they don't, when they go into an interview and somebody says, well, what questions have you got to ask of us then, type of questions. What either they go, well, no, not really, or they never ask, difficult but good questions like, so what do you really enjoy? What do you, my manager, my potential, but what do you really enjoy? And then, of course, the flip question is, well, what don't you enjoy about working in this business? Because, okay, people want a job and they need to earn money, they need to pay the bills and so on and so forth, but you don't work for a long time, right? So, you need to find some level of enjoyment, from that. And I think that your point about the, you're sitting down and having a virtual coffee with somebody because you need to have a chat about something. Yeah, absolutely. They people should, they ought to know that, what's coming. But that doesn't mean that, just because you're having a chat doesn't mean you're not going to go for a beer with them that night. Doesn't mean you're not still, not still going to get on and so on and so forth. You're just saying, look, this is how I'm feeling. I might be wrong, but this is how I'm feeling. And it's interesting that, that you're encouraging people to say, well, look, I can't fix this. You want I won't reference it too much, but I know on our previous podcast he's got something about vulnerability, which if you're interested, I'll send you one of the podcasts that he's done, not with us, but it's a really good point about vulnerability in the working life. But basically what he says is that, if you're right at the top of the organization, you're very vulnerable. You want to know what's going on. You don't know. But if you're in that middle block, you don't want to be asked the questions about, well, why am I not working for 100% of my time, or those sorts of things. Really quite astute observation. Now I think you're saying the same thing. Anyway, I'm talking too much. This is your podcast, so I need to move on.
Thank you, Mark. I was just going to send you a Teams chat, mate. See if we can edit some of this out. You had your interview last week. Absolutely. So some really good stuff in there, Dave. I'm gonna wrap the next two questions up because they're all about technology and data. Yeah. So obviously we run a data consultancy, and you run a very large technology company. So I'm assuming the answer to this is going to be quite complex in its own right. But how do Bytes derive value from your technology and data, and does that involve any cloud technology as part of that roadmap? And are you allowed to share it to start with? I guess is the first.
I can share pieces of it.
Yeah.
Obviously the answer is, I don't think you're going to find a business that doesn't utilize cloud in some form or another. Even if you're just using Microsoft Power BI for your dashboards and your visibility, you are using cloud and cloud analytics to achieve that. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to. Data, the actual data itself. I'll take my usual phrase that I use and I'll try and make it suitable for broadcast, which is if you put poor quality data into the system, you will get poor quality data out. I normally use.
Can I rephrase that?
You can.
Crap in, crap out.
Or, the other one.
The other one.
Yeah,
just in case we get banned off Apple or something, we'll
refrain from that. Crap in, crap out will do. We'll use that. And it is true. So for any business, one of the hardest elements is to get, all the toys are there, right? All the tools are there for any business to use. Big data analytics, throw it up into the cloud, slice it and dice it, data cubes, analytics, reporting anything you want, it's all there. And, even somebody who is not hands-on anymore like me can take a data set off a server and can bung it into Power BI and start tweaking it around and drag fields into different places and can do some quite complex analysis, right? At a base level. And, because as you said, I'm at the top of the business, so I don't really know what's going on anymore. I then look at those data, I look at it completely out of, you look at it completely out of context.
We'll quote you on that.
There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So ultimately, this is the problem, right? You can make data look however you want. I could take the same data set and report it to the city and make us look amazing, and then I could show the same data set internally and use it to beat somebody over the head for not doing their job well enough, and it would be the same data.
Yeah.
Okay. Data is all about what you do with it, but the most important thing about data is the quality of the data that goes in. And I think, and being honest, that's our biggest challenge, is capturing high quality data in a way that doesn't mean that our account managers and our administrators' jobs is just about capturing data. Yeah. So trying to find that balance where you can just embed the data capture into their job, so it's part of their job and it adds value to their job. And again, cost versus value, right? So putting the data into the system in a way it can be used has to be done in a way that adds value to what they're doing. And if you can achieve that, then the business gets good quality reporting, and the salespeople, account managers, administrators, and all that kind of stuff, all those people derive value from it. And that's our biggest challenge, if I'm being honest. The one thing, if anything, that we possibly struggled with in the past was having somebody at a board level who was a technology focused person. That's one of the things that Bytes has gained since I joined in the broader sense from the 1st of March last year. And I do have not a lot of meetings, but a fairly regular catch up with our sales director and some of our senior sales managers around trying to get the balance right and trying to make sure we're capturing good data. And it is a challenge. And the other problem then is trying to balance that with, there's some amazing tools out there. There's some amazing tools out there that you can use, and I'm trying to stop people running off and just subscribing and doing it's I'll just put this Office 3, it just needs my Office 365 account details and it will go and produce me this snazzy report. And it's like, whoa, what have you just done? You've just hooked our data sources up to what? I don't think so. Yeah. And balancing innovation and creativity with control, because obviously a lot of our data has got customer information in it, which means it's going back to the GDPR, it's GDPR sensitive. Yeah. So you can't just bung it wherever you want without doing impact assessments and things like that. It's tricky, but the underlying thing is it comes back to people again, which is if you can construct data capture in a way that they can derive value from the process that we as a business need to get the information, then that's what you need to be shooting at as a business. I would be the first to admit that we haven't got the balance right yet. And I think very few businesses have. Yeah. They either capture too much or too little. Few do. Yeah. There are a few businesses I know do a very good job of it.
Yeah, obviously, Gethin mentioned that one of the things we get involved with is CRM data central to CRM systems and high quality and so on. I won't be long, Geth. And I wanted to segue.
I've got another question. That's all.
I wanted to segue back to the people point, which you did, but about the communication and a word we've not yet used, I don't think, trust. So at the end of the day, if you're yes, you're capturing good quality data, but you're also maintaining it, and then you're disposing of it at the end of its useful life, and so on and so forth. It feels to me like that communication of what you're trying to get to and trusting the people to do the right thing is probably quite close to what needs to be done in terms of the solution of improving your lot in this area.
I would agree. I think there's one thing that currently businesses, certainly in my experience, have got slightly wrong at the moment, and I don't know why, which is we seem to think everything has to be carrot at work. We have to build this fluffy, I don't want to go on into the Millennium Snowflake rant that any of us that are grizzled old veterans of this industry would do. But there does seem to be this element of everybody has to want to do something and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes, just occasionally, there'll be a box that needs filling in on a form as part of the CRM process that nobody wants to fill in, but the business needs it. And sometimes, just occasionally, you have to say, I'm sorry, guys, but I just need you to do that. And if you don't, it causes us a problem as a business. An example for me, for the consultants, going back for years and years and years, is sign-off sheets at the end of a job. Okay, we've all been there. Geth, you talked about timesheets earlier. We've all been there. It's Friday afternoon. The job's dragged on. You want to get home. You've been left to it. You're ready to go, and you don't know where the person is. He's like, oh, I'll be over there if you need me for anything. You're like, well, I'm done. I can leave. Oh, I need to get this flipping job sheet signed off, right? And I'll send it to him. Oh, I haven't got time at the moment. Send it to me afterwards. Okay, and you can never get them. You can never get a signed off worksheet if you don't get it there and then. It never happens. Guess what? From an auditing and accountancy point of view, if you don't have a signed off worksheet, you can't recognize the revenue of the job. And if you do recognize the revenue of the job and the auditors decide to spot check that particular job, you're in trouble, because now they're going to go and dig at every job because you're not getting worksheets for your work. Okay, nobody wants to get worksheets, but unfortunately, sometimes you have to wield a stick to get them done out of the consultants. It's just part of life because the business needs it. And I think we're afraid. I genuinely think we're afraid to do that. And what's changed in the last year? I think we're even more afraid of doing things that would upset people because we can't deal with it. They're not in front of us. We can't see their body language. We can't see if they've done this and gone all tense or if they're chilled and relaxed. We can't see it. So we're afraid of anything that would be vaguely contentious.
So just going back to that then, right? The recognizing the revenue and the accountancy framework that you're operating under and all that. And I'm not going to go into the details, but I do know that Bytes has gone through an IPO over the last year.
Yes.
And I was just keen to see, was that stressful for you? It looks like, looking at the share price, has been pretty successful for Bytes, the company. But did that bring added stress, and does that bring extra regulation to what you have to do in terms of delivering services, or is it the same as it was before?
Do you know what? In a lot of ways, we've been very lucky. Bytes, I mean, although Bytes is recently, as you say, we IPO'd in December last year, but we were already part of a listed group, albeit on the South African Stock Exchange rather than the London Stock Exchange.
Right.
So we were already a listed group. So a lot of the governance and control was there. So there was very little, to be honest, from an operational point of view for the guys on the ground, very little change. Yeah. I was very lucky in that we had a fairly dedicated team for the IPO, which meant that beyond a few investor presentations and providing a little bit of data, those of us that are kind of boots on the ground running the business were kept out of it. So we could make sure, I mean, so many businesses, particularly smaller businesses who go through this kind of process, suffer a business dip afterwards because the management team has been completely distracted with the thing that actually they're working towards, if you see what I mean. And we were very lucky in that. The group chief exec and the group finance director allowed us to get on with it and just kind of asked us quick questions when they needed extra information, and they allowed us to get on with it. And again, I think that kind of shows the culture at Bytes that we haven't encountered any business problems or any business challenges as a result of that process. But it's been an exciting time, and you do keep half an eye on the share price. And I know our group MD's been out, starting to explain to investors and shareholders what last financial year looked like and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I can't share any of that.
No.
But he's out in that process, and that's a new world for him. It's probably his life that's changed the most, actually.
I'll segue to the other question. I used to work for BT many years ago. And they were one of the first companies in the UK to introduce what we now call an intranet. This people will go, what? That was a problem to begin with. But user adoption of the intranet, back then was a big thing. Like user adoption of anything is today. The single biggest enticement to users adopting and engaging with the intranet was the publication of the share price of BT on that intranet.
Hey, well, when BT went public, I mean, that was a massive thing in the UK. I mean, there's a lot. Hopefully, there'll be some of the younger generation watching this who'll go, "I have no idea what they're talking about."
Exactly.
What? But there was TV adverts, and it was so many. It was oversubscribed, and it was a really big event in the 80s, wasn't it? When BT was privatised here in the UK.
I can't remember it, Dave.
Oh, shut up!
I'll leave it to you two to remember that.
Whatever, Gav, whatever.
Listen, Dave, we're not tight for time, but just sort of looking at the time. Maybe we'll move on, Geth, to the next question. This is another people-oriented thing, but it's you, the person on this one. But what advice would you give your younger self, or perhaps those starting out, about life and perhaps about the IT industry?
I mean, to my younger self, chill out and grow up, actually, would probably be the biggest piece of advice, because and I still find this, if I'm really into something and if I'm really concentrating on something, and particularly if I'm concentrating on something that needs to be done against a deadline and I get interrupted, I am a tetchy, argumentative little idiot. I mean, I really am. I'm a complete teenager. And it's just part of my personality, I guess. I do try and rein it in. I think a lot of people, and I think everybody who's watching this probably knows somebody who does this. We've all worked with somebody like this. When you're in a meeting, and there are certain people in meetings that seem to, because they feel the need to add an idea or add value to the meeting, they come up with ideas for the sake of ideas when the meeting should have ended a half an hour ago, because we've done it to death. It's like, there's no more value to be added. We're done. Let's just go and try something. And I wasn't one of those people, but I worked with people who were. And the biggest thing, actually, it kind of, for me, if I could have passed this experience on to my younger self, I've had a great run I've worked for this business effectively for over 21 years now in one form or another. I came in as a consultant, I became a team leader, I became a manager, I became a director, and now I have a group level role. So I've had a great run over the last 20 years. And I probably grew at the same time the business did. But the real application of skill from the last 15, 16 months since I came into this role was sometimes you've just got to wait and look. And that doesn't mean you're being inactive, and it doesn't mean that you're wasting time. But, I joined the larger organization on the 1st of March 2020. And I pretty much didn't make a decision on anything until the June or the July. I sat on meetings, I talked to people, I listened, and I formed ideas about what actually would make a difference rather than jumping in and in the first meeting go, well, it's obvious what you need to do. You just need to do this, because it would have been the wrong decision. And I'm not saying that every decision I've made over the last 18 months is the right decision either. There are certain things that I'm looking at now going, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have done that. And at that point, I'd say the second thing is don't be afraid of failure. And if you are failing, fail fast. And that's a phrase I will pinch from our managing director, Jack. I will pinch that because that's his. So I'll credit him for that. Fail fast. If you're going to fail, make the decision, get it done.
I think we should credit that the Agile Manifesto.
I was going to say credit the Agile Manifesto, but no,
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's really important. So many people seem to think that when they start something, come hell or high water, they have to see it through to completion. Don't worry about it. If it's not working, try something different. So wait, be patient, look, understand what change will actually make a difference, and then put yourself behind that change. Push that up, put yourself behind that change, believe in it and own it and push it. But if it's not working, don't be afraid to do something different. Those are really the kind of key things. So many people are afraid of failure. They think saying this isn't working is a problem. Yeah. They design something or create something. I mean, Geff, I kind of pinch for you a little bit here. If you come into a business and you design something and you try it and it doesn't work, it's not about, well, you designed this and it doesn't work. And it's like, well, we all agreed on this design. We've tried it. It hasn't worked. Let's try something different. It isn't about blame and it isn't about that. And that's the most important thing for me to go back and say to my younger self. It's just believe in yourself. Nobody's out to get you. For managers, for anybody who's becoming a manager or wants to take a team lead role, identify in yourself what made you successful and bring that out of other people. The worst managers that I've worked with are people that were inspiring individuals about how they did things, but they couldn't translate it into getting people to be able to do it. So some of the best salesmen I've ever met were terrible sales managers because they knew how they sell, but they couldn't communicate to the people that work for them. They couldn't build a team that sold in the same way. Yeah. Because all of a sudden, for some reason, with some people that manage, everything that made them good, as soon as they become a manager, they forget about it and just give out this random set of instructions to their staff that bear no resemblance to how it made them successful, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So there's kind of
so
probably quite a lot in there I'm throwing out, but
yeah. Cool. I think some sound advice in there, and what you've said about.
Can I chip in? Actually, Geff, I want to chip in one last thing, which is just kind of my warning to other people as they're promoting people, and as to anybody who's fairly senior in a business. We seem to have a culture, particularly in the UK, about unless you're becoming a manager, you're not succeeding. People strive for management for some reason. So what they do is they take the thing that might be the thing they've enjoyed most in the world. I mean, take you, Geff, as an example. Yeah. You're a technical person, you're an IT business, you enjoy doing what you do. Yeah. Why would you take somebody like you and go, do you know what, I'm going to promote you, stop you doing everything you enjoy, stop you doing everything that's made you good about what you've done for this business, and give you something you're completely untested in, and then shout at you when you don't do it well?
You make a very fair point there. I've got a few answers for that as well. Why people end up in that position? Because you take these really good technical folk and make them managers, and then everything suffers as a result because Absolutely. They're really good at tech. They're not really good at, let's call it, managing a team.
Salespeople as well. We take the best salespeople. It's just like, do you know what? Just pay them more money.
And that's
double commission on new business.
That's what it comes down to. It's as a technical person, you'll hit a ceiling. It's like, well, you've got to go into management to earn a few quid more.
We've got to stop that.
And that's, you're right. But that's what that is based in that culture.
Yeah.
Really. And I agree with that completely.
There's a couple of things in what you said, Dave, that we'll go to the last question in a sec, but that for me, summarise it. It's like it amazes me, frankly, that we're in this situation. We're all agreeing about the same thing here. But so two examples. Firstly, about failure. Whether you like him or loathe him, Richard Branson, God knows how many times he's failed doing stuff, right? And everybody will be able to quote the phrase, "You learn the most from when you've not done something so well." That's not a very articulate way of saying it, but that's the truth. Why don't we get that in business in the UK, right? That you know it's right, right? You know you learn from your failure, and clearly if you're going to do something, don't keep pushing it if it's going to turn to that word that we were going to talk about earlier. Just stop, right? Fail fast, as you say. And I think the other thing then is just about the expert, if you like, the expert salesperson or technologist or whatever, and then becoming the manager. We all look at sport. Not all of us. Most of us look at sport, right, in one way, shape, or form, whether it's football, rugby, or whatever. And we all, let's take football. We know damn well that the best managers are often not the best players.
Absolutely.
And why don't we get this in our business life is completely beyond me. So there's no question there in that. That's just a rant, frankly.
No, but I completely agree, Mark, and I don't understand why we do it.
No. And well, hopefully that will change, and you get the right people in the right role doing what they want to do. I suppose that's good. So just one last question, then, Dave. Right, just to wrap things up, and I think it's on me to ask it, Mark. I can't remember, but I think it is.
Right.
It's a nice, easy one to finish. Tell us a fun fact about yourself that perhaps nobody else knows, or not many people know anyway.
Well, do you know what? I mean, I'm going to tell you a fun fact that most people do probably know, but I'll tell you a fun fact, hopefully, about why it appeals to me so much. So the fun fact is, yes, I this is my day job, but in my what I laughably call my spare time, I'm a scuba dive instructor. Okay, so a lot of people know that. I do seem to trip over a lot of people. I didn't know you did that, but I am a scuba diver instructor. I spend my weekends. I spend my weekends in quarries in the UK in a dry suit, God knows why, teaching people to dive. Teaching people to dive is probably the easiest thing to do in the world, right? Because most people who arrive at a dive school are there because they want to learn to dive. They've got an idea of being in beautiful blue water on holiday, in the Maldives or wherever, and they're going to see all these beautiful fish. And then we throw them into a quarry in the UK and they go, what the hell is this? However, and I think for anybody who's in a high pressure job, particularly in IT, what they might not realize is why diving appealed to me as a diver, not necessarily as an instructor, because as a senior person in the business and a bit of a control freak, I think instructor is a logical place to go to if you're into diving, right? But the reason I do it is because for whatever reason, for me personally, when I go under the water, work doesn't come with me. Never has done. Literally none of this. I'm driving, I'm thinking about the next meeting, this, that, and the other. Even if I'm pottering, even when I'm mowing the lawn at the weekend, you're thinking, your brain's ticking over in the background on other things. When I'm diving, it's not there. So I can genuinely leave it behind.
Not dying, Dave, isn't it? It's making sure you don't drown. So you've got other things to worry about.
The thing is, once you're an experience, as with all things, Geth, once you get practiced at it, it becomes not a task in its own right. It's like when you first learn to drive, you're putting all of your concentration into remembering to indicate, remembering to look in the mirror, whatever. You've been driving as long as we have, none of that. It's all background thought process. Yeah. So even for me, after over 10 years in the water and nearly 1,000 dives, it's still, for whatever reason, all of this that we do on a day-to-day basis doesn't go with me. And that's what I love doing, man. And that's the fact maybe people don't know is I found a hobby. That's kind of my point of it. I found a hobby that genuinely enables me to switch off and relax. And I'm very lucky in that respect. And I implore anybody else to just try and find something that means they don't think about work.
I live bizarrely. I live about 3 or 4 miles from the so-called national, what's it called? Something like the Wales's National Diving Centre,
National Dive and Activity Centre,
which is actually in England, but you know,
yeah, absolutely.
never mind. It's just across the border. But maybe Dave, the answer to the question of what advice you'd give your younger self, maybe it should also be find something where you can actually switch off from your work, because you need that de-stressing, and maybe that's just another way of looking at it.
No,
there's always a risk with that, though. Your hobby can become your work, or not a risk, but definitely a possibility.
We're not talking about you now, Jeff. We're talking about
that's
Dave,
what
right?
Gethin knows me, right, Mark? So that's what IT did for me. IT was my hobby, and I avoided it as a career for many, many years, because I didn't want my hobby to become my work, and it did. Inevitably, I think for most of us, or a lot of us, it does. Yeah. And I was very lucky to find another hobby.
Yeah.
And to keep the two separate. And that, I think that's, as I say, younger advice to myself: embrace something else when it happens. Then embrace something else to be your hobby.
Yeah, cool. Good advice. Thanks, Dave. That's been a really informative and useful 55 minutes we've been chatting. So I know you've got another meeting starting soon, but just place on thanks for coming on, ladies and gentlemen.
Brilliant, Dave. Dave Rawle, thank you.
Chief Technology Officer for Bytes Technology.